So let's dive in and let's build our very first simple Ionic app or get something onto the screen. For this, you can visit ionicframework.com, and there under Developers Installation, you find installation instructions. Now, first important thing, you don't need an Ionic account. You can instead simply install that Ionic CLI here. Now, for that to be installable and to run, you also need another tool, which is Node.js. You can get Node.js from nodejs.org. Node.js is a JavaScript runtime that you, for example, and mainly, use to build server-side applications with JavaScript. That is not what we'll do in this course. We'll still need Node.js for two reasons. Reason number one is its package manager, npm for Node Package Manager, which is used to manage dependencies like other third-party libraries in Node apps, but which also is the de facto standard package manager for web projects in general. So also for front-end web applications as we're building it here in the course in the end. And therefore, we will use npm to manage our dependencies, and Ionic is just such a dependency, you could say. Now, in addition to npm, we also need Node.js itself because the Ionic build workflow and the tools, the Ionic CLI, behind the scenes run based on Node.js. They use Node.js features to execute correctly. We don't need to write the code for that, but we need to have Node.js installed for these tools to work. So from nodejs.org, download the latest version, in my case 11.8, and only if that should fail, use the LTS version here. So simply download it, walk through the installer. It's the same on Windows and Mac OS. It's a normal installer. You go through it, and thereafter you'll have Node.js and npm installed automatically. Then you can execute this command, and you execute this in your normal terminal or command prompt. Now on Windows, feel free to run this command prompt as administrator by right-clicking on the executable, run as administrator. On Mac OS and Linux, you very likely need to add sudo in front of this command to get the right permissions to execute it. Well, with that, you're probably prompted to enter your password, and this will now install the Ionic CLI and tooling, you could say, globally on your Mac or PC. Now, why globally? Because now we can use that Ionic CLI anywhere in any path here in our terminal to create new Ionic projects, to run them, to build an Ionic app, and so on. So now with that installed, we can use it to build a new app, to create a new app. For this, in your terminal or command prompt, navigate into the folder where you want to create your new project folder for this Ionic project. Once you navigated there, run Ionic start. This basically generates a new project. It will now ask you a couple of questions like, what should be the name of that project? And I'll name it Ionic Angular Course. But you can, of course, choose any name you want. Next, you can choose from a couple of templates. Now, the list here could change over time. You essentially have the choice between a blank template, which is a totally empty project with just a starting page, the side menu template, where you have a side menu you can slide in from the left, and a tabs menu where you have some tabs at the bottom. Now, we'll learn about all these different navigation options throughout the course, and you will learn how to not just use them from a finished template, but how to build them on your own. And therefore, I will just start with blank here, which is the most boring, but also the most simplest template to start with. And as I said, we'll learn about the rest later. Now, this will generate a new project and install all the dependencies, like Angular or Ionic, this project requires. Let's wait for this to finish, and I'll be back once it is. Now, once this finished, I'm asked if I want to use Ionic App Flow and connect my app, and you can simply answer no here. This is one of these cloud services, which would be usable for free even. You can create a free account and use some services, but I don't need any of them right now, so I'll just type in N and hit enter here. Now, next, you can navigate, you see the commands here actually, you can navigate into this newly created Ionic Angular course, or whatever you named it, folder, and in there simply run Ionic Serve. Now, Ionic Serve will, behind the scenes, as you can see here actually, use the Angular CLI, which is installed for you in this project, to spin up a development server, which in the end runs your application, builds your Angular application. And that's really cool. Ionic uses the Angular CLI behind the scenes, so all the cool features offered by the Angular CLI are included in an Ionic project as well. And you don't need to wait for the Ionic CLI to update to include something you might want to use from the Angular CLI. And if that's something you're totally not interested in, well, then it doesn't hurt you that it uses the Angular CLI. So here, I then got my first Ionic app. And this doesn't look too fancy yet, but it already doesn't look bad either. This especially looks good if you open your Chrome Developer Tools or whichever browser you're using. But in Chrome, in the Developer Tools, you can click this toggle device thing here. And you can then preview the app as it would look on different mobile devices. Just reload after you selected a new one. And this doesn't look too shabby. It looks already quite a bit like a mobile app, even though there isn't too much meat in it. But let's change that. Now, to change that, we need an editor. We need an IDE where we can write our code. In this course, I will use Visual Studio Code, which is a free IDE built for web development. It's fast, it's awesome, it constantly gets new features, it's really great. You can get it from code.visualstudio.com, and there you can download it for your platform. It's a simple installer. You download it, walk through the installer, and once you have it installed, you can open the project, the folder you generated here. So in my case, Ionic-Angular-course with Visual Studio Code. Here I did open that Ionic-Angular-course folder. Now inside of Visual Studio Code, it should look like this for you as well. If it doesn't, you can hit Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P on Windows. And if you enter theme here, you should be able to pick your color theme here by pressing Enter. And I'm using the Dark Plus theme. So in case you want to have that same look, you can use the Dark Plus theme here. I'm also using some extensions. So if you go to View, Extensions here, I recommend that you use both the Angular Essentials. You can simply search for that here, and then install these Angular Essentials package, this Angular Essentials package here. I already got it installed. Simply install it on your own. This helps you with general Angular development. And what I also do in this, or what I also use in this course, I also use the Material Icon theme. And this is totally optional. It's this one here. It just changes the file icons you see inside of Visual Studio Code. And I like that look here, so I installed that theme as well. That doesn't help you with development, it just gives you prettier icons. And if you want to have these same icons you can see here, you can install this theme. Now once you're done picking your extensions, you can go back to Explorer here in the View menu, or use this shortcut as I just did. So this gives you the look and feel you see here in this course. And what you find in there, in its core, is a normal Angular app. So if you work with Angular before, which you should for this course, then this does look quite familiar here. You got a source folder with the app folder, with the app module, the app component. And here in the app component HTML file, we see the first interesting thing. These are not normal HTML elements, and they're also not normal Angular components. In the end, this here are these web components added by Ionic. Now, these are some web components. We can see even more here in your home page HTML file. You've got an ion header, toolbar, title, ion content, and then also a normal HTML element. So it is quite normal to mix and match them. But Ionic has a rich suite of built-in elements, which in case you want to get a sneak peek already, you can find in the official docs under Developers UI Components on ionicframework.com. And there you see a list of all the web components it ships with. And that's quite a lot. We can do cool things, like here, we could add an ion button, which is one of the components it ships with. And in this course, you will learn about a lot. So you don't need to memorize this right now or get shocked regarding how you should ever learn this. You will learn it throughout the course. And there, I could say change text. And let's say I want to change this text up there. So let's grab this text here, maybe move it into a paragraph. And on that button here, we can now add a click listener and execute on change text. So we write normal Angular code here. That is what I want to show you. This is a normal Angular code, a normal Angular click listener. Just the element is not a normal Angular or HTML element. It is an Ionic web component. And then now that we added this click listener and I'm targeting on change text, I can add a on change text method here to my homepage component class, which is a normal Angular component, as you can tell. It has the component decorator, it has a template URL and a selector, so all things you know from Angular. And in there, I could have a text property with default starting text, let's say. And when we trigger this function here, this method, I set this text equal to changed. And now all we have to do, again, normal Angular logic, all we have to do is we go to homepage HTML, and there we can now output this with string interpolation, also a normal Angular feature, and we can target text here. And text is simply the property name I have in here. Now, with that, if I now save this, thanks to Ionic Surf still running, and you should keep this up and running, it will automatically watch your code for changes and reload your app in the browser. So rebuild the app and then reload the app in the browser whenever such a change happens. And therefore now, if you go to the tab where your app runs, you see the change template. You see this button, which looks like this without me adding any CSS, which is another part of these built-in web components. They have a nice styling included. And if I press this button, it changes. Now, by the way, if I would switch to, let's say, a Pixel 2, so to an Android device, and I reload, you can also see that the button now looks differently. And if I tap it, we get this ripple effect here. So that is a lot of the stuff Ionic does for you. It automatically adjusts its components to the platform they're running on. It gives you nice styling, and you can use them like normal web elements, like normal HTML elements, just with a lot of functionality already included. Now, that is essentially what you will be able to do with Ionic. We haven't even seen the part yet where we take this web app and run it on a real native device. We'll do this later in the course. But this is in the end how we will work with Ionic throughout the course. We'll use the many elements it offers us, write normal Angular logic, and we can build nice, beautiful, automatically adjusting web apps that we can deploy as web apps and run as normal websites, but which we can then later also deploy as real native apps, which look and feel like native apps because, well, they are native apps then by the end of the course. And I hope this whets your appetite here. Obviously, we'll learn all about the different components here, which ones exist, how we use them, how we configure them, and how we combine them with Angular. We'll learn all about this throughout the course.